Nation. We got you, Nicole.
Hello, hello. I want to start with you, Stephen A., because you've been so critical of Kevin Durant and his decision to leave the Thunder after last season. How does this and the championship impact your view of that move now?
It doesn't impact it at all. I feel exactly the way that I've always felt, even though I don't think tonight is the night to get into all of that. The fact of the matter is that he's one of the top 3 players on the planet. He's absolutely sensational. We all knew this, which is why we were so upset, some of us anyway, that he elected to go to a team that was 73-9 and was the all-time single-season, team in terms of their record, because they were so explosive. The Splash Brothers were intact. Draymond Green was still there. Sean Livingston was still there. Andre Iguodala was there. And when you add one of the greatest players on the planet to that squad, as we have ever seen, it didn't hurt that Steph Curry added 34 points on 14 of 20 shooting. It certainly didn't hurt that Andre Iguodala added 20 off the bench. But had it not been for the presence of Kevin Durant and the efficiency of Kevin Durant, we might have been seeing a replica of what transpired last year. But because of the presence of Kevin Durant, we saw what we saw. We saw what we expected to see from the time that he signed with this team last July 4th, and that was for the Golden State Warriors to be crowned NBA champions. That's exactly what happened.
Michael, so much talk about this Warriors team being one of the best, if not the best team in NBA history. You were around the Bulls during their run. What do you think after seeing both of them play?
Well, Nicole, they've elevated themselves to be in the conversation. I don't think there's any question about that when you have the kind of postseason that they had, losing a single game on the road to the defending champions. But in the conversation. I mean, it's easy to sort of crown people now. We're all sort of prisoners of the present, and I don't want to be that. Stephen A. and I are old enough, and I'm older than he is, to have not only watched Michael Jordan and Phil Jackson, Scottie Pippen, and Steve Kerr and those teams, but Magic's Lakers, Showtime Lakers, Larry Bird and Kevin McHale and Robert Parrish and Dennis Johnson. We're talking about, what, 4 Hall of Famers on one team? I'm old enough to have watched those teams. And going back even further for me, I mean, there's a team that only won 1 championship, Moses Malone, Julius Erving, and the which turned out five Sixers of 1983. So there are a lot of great teams out there. They played in different eras, the Bad Boy Pistons. And I don't know that I'm willing to say that 1 championship season sort of vaults them past those teams that I mentioned and other teams I haven't, teams featuring Wilt Chamberlain, teams featuring Bill Russell, teams featuring Oscar Robertson, and Lou Alcindor, excuse me, let me not forget that team, Stephen. But the Warriors, by virtue of this, I mean, you talk about multiple Hall of Famers. Kevin Durant is at the height of his powers, and we saw that in 3 of the 4 games, and he was the only Warrior who was great in the 4th game, the game they lost. So 4 or 5 games, I should say, in the 5th game. But the Warriors are right there. And part of, I think, any NBA team's greatness is winning multiples consecutively. Those teams I mentioned, Hakeem Olajuwon's Houston Rockets, but they're in the conversation right now with the greatest teams ever.
LeBron and companies they've been able to break that up after, they've played 3 years in a row. LeBron did score 41 points in this one, but at the end of the night, fell just 1 assist shy of averaging the triple-double throughout the NBA Finals. Stephen A., what does this do for his legacy?
Well, I don't think it hurts it. I mean, we saw LeBron James show up. He came to play. He was dominant offensively. He about the greatness of Jordan, and we all believe that he's the GOAT. He's the greatest of all time. But there was an individual by the name of Scottie Pippen that showed up and helped this guy do the kind of things that he did. Jordan never won a title without Scottie Pippen. Let's be clear about that. They were the Horace Grants of the world, the 3-headed monsters with the Stacey Kings, the Bill Winnington, the Bill Cartwrights of the world, the people like that. But then, with the second three-peat, you went out and you got Dennis Rodman because you had lost upon Jordan's return to the Orlando Magic with Shaq and Penny and Nick Anderson and Dennis Scott and those boys. So you obviously always need somebody. LeBron didn't have that individual tonight. We saw Kyrie make sensational offensive plays as he has done throughout this series, but he struggles at times defensively. Nobody can guard Durant. And when you look at the way Steph Curry was playing, the way Andre Iguodala came off the bench production over all of the Golden State Warriors compared to what you got from the Cleveland Cavaliers, listen, it's a team game for a reason. LeBron can only do but so much. If he performed poorly, Mike, it would have been different. but he didn't perform poorly tonight. He made sure that he showed up and did what he could have done. I would have liked to have seen him post more, attack the basket more earlier, as opposed to what he did later on when he was getting to the basket at will. But nevertheless, the greatest player in the world did nothing to disprove the reality that he's still the greatest player in the world. What we've seen, however, is that there's an ascension that's taken place before our very eyes, and that is of that man, Kevin Durant. He has put the world on notice that he has arrived, and now he's got a championship on his resume. Clearly, he is here, and he is a force to be reckoned with. Not that he ever wasn't, but really, really, it's more emphatic now.
Well, Nicole, too, we should add that, remember, every great player, essentially, except Jordan, was dominated sometimes in the finals. I mean, Shaq was swept twice out of the finals. Kobe Bryant lost in the playoffs and lost in the finals. We saw, Larry Bird swept in a 4-game series, not the finals, but in a 4-game series. Magic and Kareem together, playing together, were swept out of a 7-game series, 4 games by those Sixers team, that Sixers team in 1983 that I mentioned. So LeBron is in some company, some pretty great company he'd rather not be in right now on this night, because he joins that group of guys, as great as they are, all Hall of Famers I mentioned, in a losing role. But LeBron, in averaging nearly a triple-double, didn't get the kind of help. Look, he said a couple of nights ago that his team had to play an A++ game in order to beat Golden State, and they did. And that means, by definition, Kyrie Irving and Kevin Love were going to have to play that with support from J.R. Smith. Now, J.R. Smith lended more than support tonight, but Kevin Love, early foul trouble, wasn't there. What do you have, 2 baskets, Stephen A?
6 points.
That's not going to get it for this team. And, another thing LeBron sort of talked to his own executives about, his own front office about all year, was another playmaker. Kyrie Irving is one of the great finishers ever, and maybe the greatest finisher we've seen at that position, around the rim, under the rim. But he doesn't make any plays for anybody else, and LeBron is going to have some help with another player. Steven mentioned Scottie Pippen. That's where he's really, LeBron, lacking a teammate.
Allow me to interject. If there is one place where LeBron James can be held accountable, it is this. In the aftermath of the Golden State Warriors acquiring Kevin Durant last summer, LeBron, periodically, we heard him complain what he needed. Needed a backup point guard. You got that in Darren Williams. Needed another shooter when J.R. Smith went down. Got that in Kyle Korver. Derek Williams was an athletic front court player that could spell you some minutes off the bench. The Bogut injury hurt because you acquired Bogut, and then he goes down 59 seconds into his tenure in Cleveland. So as a result, that really, really crippled them to some degree, because if you had that frontline protector, who knows what it could have ended up being.
I feel like heading into this game, there were a fair amount of questions as to which version of which team was going to show up. Game 4 showed us that different version of the Cavs team that wasn't there in Game 3, 1, 2, and 3. What was your biggest takeaway from each team when this all played out?
Well, I mean, Golden State's a better team now than they were last year. They're a better team now than they were 2 years ago. And remember, because of Kevin Durant, that includes last year's 73-win season, though they did not win a championship. But with Durant out there, when you have, I mean, I hate to use the phrase second option, Stephen A., but that's what Steph Curry becomes. I mean, a guy who's a 2-time MVP, a unanimous MVP a year ago, he is now sometimes your second option, which means Klay Thompson, one of the great shooters in the history of the game, is third. And so by adding Kevin Durant, and I will say this, and my dear friend here and I probably disagree a little bit, I'm changing my mind a little bit on super teams and the ability to assemble them. I mean, for so long, management held that right to trade people as they saw fit. Stephen's right about Durant going in a way that none of the superstars of a previous generation would ever have done. But Kevin Durant didn't glom on. Kevin Durant is the MVP. I don't know what the announcement has been made already. He's the MVP of this series.
No question.
He's the second best player in this series, the second best by about that much. And so when you add that player, I mean, Golden State is a better team, and Cleveland did not have the firepower to match them for long. Match them one game, that's it. And now they're going to have a super team effort and go out and recruit somebody if LeBron's going to be here.
Where Michael and I disagree is this. I mean, he's Michael loves basketball the way I love basketball. Seeing that elite team, that super team, that giant that everybody's chasing for, he likes that. Now, let me admit to my hypocrisy. If it's my New York Yankees in baseball, I don't mind it at all. It doesn't bother me at all. But in the sport of basketball, basketball, it really grates my nerves, but only for this reason. I have absolutely no problem whatsoever with Kevin Durant joining another team, leaving Oklahoma City. I have a problem with the fact that he left the team that beat him just a month earlier, and they were considered the elite team. A lot of us believe if Draymond Green hadn't gotten suspended for Game 5 last year, that the Golden State Warriors would have came into these finals as the reigning, defending two-time champions. And so when we look at it from that perspective, and you're the second best player on the planet, and you decide to join that team, which just beat you, there's nothing inside of me that says that's good for basketball. I just don't believe it because I like competitiveness.
You know
I like theater, and I don't get that. But
you got one
it doesn't take away from the greatness of Durant by any stretch. It validates it.
You got one of those two. We got theater.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean,
you have theater.
Look, my whole position on this, Nicole, is the NBA isn't the NFL. There's no parity. There's never been parity. There have been dynastic teams and great teams that hold you spellbound for sometimes 6, 8, 10 years. And the Warriors have done that. Kevin Durant joined this team because he couldn't beat them with the team he was on. No matter how great Russell Westbrook was, Kevin Durant sensed they weren't going to be able to beat Golden State or Cleveland, and I think he was right. And so he joined this team because he said whether or not they win, Kevin Durant went back on something he did say when he said earlier in his career.
Yes.
He didn't want to do that. Yeah. But you know what? The reality of having to lose to Golden State and look at Cleveland and lost to LeBron in Miami, that led him to Golden State, and I'm sure it's a decision that he just doesn't.
I'm going to be watching you. I want to see if you're totally satisfied with two elite teams in the league and nobody else. I want to make sure.
We'll revisit this conversation again later on.